Thank you for joining me on 13 Plus. I'm Cali Lichter, and this is On the Docket, a weekly recap of crime and court in and around the state of Michigan. This week, we're taking a deep dive into the trial of former Grand Rapids police officer Christopher Schurr, whose criminal trial begins April 28th for the killing of Patrick Leoya. We have extended conversations with both teams' attorneys, Patrick's family, experts, and community leaders, as well as a breakdown of the jury, which is seated for this historic trial. That is what's on the docket. It's been more than 3 years since former officer Christopher Schurr shot and killed Patrick Leoya during a traffic stop in Grand Rapids. As we approach the trial, it's important to go back and remember the timeline of events and the reactions felt across the region. 8:11 a.m., April 4th, 2022.
1915.
A Grand Rapids police officer pulls over a tan Nissan Altima near the intersection of Griggs and Nelson Southeast on the city's southeast side.
Hey, stay in the car! Stay in the car!
Patrick Leoya, a 26-year-old refugee from the Congo, exits the vehicle, disregarding commands from 31-year-old officer Christopher Schurr, a 7-year veteran of the force, to remain inside the car.
You have a driver's license. Do you speak English? No. Stop.
Almost immediately, a struggle begins that lasts nearly 3 minutes and ends when Officer Schurr shoots Leoya in the back of the head.
Drop taser!
Everyone.
That same day, the investigation is turned over to Michigan State Police, and city leaders gather to tell the public what has happened.
This is indeed a really difficult day for our city, and my prayers go out to everyone impacted by today's tragic incident.
A little more than a week later, on April 13th, dash cam, body cam, and cell phone video shot by the passenger in Leoya's car is released to the public.
No, he good. He not resisting nothing, bro. Stop grabbing him like that. No, he good like for real. Yo, you hit him too.
But for many, it is not enough.
Our streets!
Frustrated, people take to the streets demanding their voices be heard. On April 22nd, nearly 3 weeks after his death, Patrick Leoya is laid to rest with family, community members, and civil rights leaders attending.
In Grand Rapids, we have to play our part now.
Fast forward to April 27th.
Let him speak and stop disrupting this meeting.
Commission meetings are packed with community members demanding the officer's name be released and that he be charged. After weeks of public pressure, Chief Eric Winstrom, just over a month into his new role as chief, publicly identifies Christopher Schurr as the officer involved in Patrick Leoya's death. Christopher Schurr is later charged with second-degree murder on June 9th and fired from the force 1 week later. In December, the Leoya family files an excessive force lawsuit against the city of Grand Rapids and the police department. And now, 3 years later, the trial of Christopher Schurr begins. Schurr is charged with second-degree murder and faces life or any number of years in prison if convicted. But what does that mean? In Michigan, second-degree murder can be defined by any of the following. The death was caused intentionally without premeditation, acting with disregard for human life, intending serious bodily harm that results in death, or killing someone during the perpetration of a serious crime. In this case, Becker was telling potential jurors he doesn't need to prove that Schurr killed Leoya. You can see that in the body camera videos and all the other media that was released surrounding this case. The prosecution just needs to prove Leoya's death was caused by Schurr in a state of mind with the intent to kill or do great bodily harm, or the tendency that the shooting can do those things. And it wasn't justified, and that needs to be proved beyond reasonable doubt. Now, that is a lot. But if you remember those points from earlier, that's saying that the prosecution will need to prove Leoya's death was caused intentionally. When Schurr shot his gun, he knew it would either kill or cause great bodily harm to Patrick, and that he wasn't justified to shoot. And again, that needs to be proved beyond reasonable doubt. And it's that last point that Becker was really stressing during jury selection. Jurors do not need to be 100% convinced, just convinced beyond reasonable doubt. The prosecution needs to make the case that the evidence overwhelmingly points to Schurr being guilty, leaving no room for a reasonable explanation for his innocence. Because at this point, Schurr is innocent until proven guilty, meaning the prosecution bears the burden of proof in this trial. And as Schurr prepares to face a jury to defend himself against his charge of second-degree murder, Patrick Leoya's family will be in the audience, watching to see if their journey for justice will reach its end. Our Lauren Baker has the family's final words ahead of the trial.
Even in their sorrow,
we are not at peace. We don't have the joy. Our heart is still broken.
the family of Patrick Leoya says their fight for justice is far from over.
We will not give up. We will not get tired. We'll keep fighting until when we get the true justice and until when this murderer is convicted.
In a matter of days, Christopher Schurr will stand trial for the killing of Patrick Leoya. In an interview with MLive through an interpreter, Leoya's father, Peter, spoke about his son's life.
Patrick was a family man, and every Friday when Patrick got paid, he will make sure he call his sibling, ask them what you want, he would buy them stuff, and would come spend time with us.
He says he thought his son had a bright future after the family moved to America to escape wars in the Congo. But he says this tragedy,
we felt like now the safe haven that we're looking for, we don't have it anymore.
Has changed his view on whether that move was worth it.
If I could predict the future and see what happened to Patrick, it could have been better for me to remain in Africa than to come here and bury my son.
Leoya was killed in April 2022 during a traffic stop. Officials say Leoya disregarded Schurr's commands, which led to a physical struggle between the two, and eventually, Schurr shot Leoya in the back of the head while he was pinned down. His father says his son would still be alive if he wasn't black.
Patrick lost his life. He was murdered by this murder because of the color of his skin, because he was black. Because if Patrick was white, a young white boy, I guarantee you 100% this will never happen to Patrick.
As the trial approaches and the possibility that Christopher Schurr will testify, his father says he still can't believe Schurr will be able to defend himself, but his son can't.
What is going to be saying? I can understand if my son was in jail. That way his word could go against my son's word. But now my son is dead.
Next to Patrick's father in the red tie, attorney Ven Johnson. He's representing the Leoya family in their civil case against Christopher Schurr. We sat down with Ven ahead of the criminal trial, which begins on Monday, April 28th, where he spoke about what we can expect during the trial.
What you're going to hear is a lot, okay? You're going to hear a lot of witnesses called. And what you're going to see is, I think, an inherent disagreement between certain officers as to whether this was a legal shooting or not an illegal shooting. Chris Becker is clearly going to put folks on the witness stand to argue and show and try to convince the jury that what Schurr did here, he was not at the moment that he pulled the trigger truly or reasonably in fear for his life, that he was imminently, meaning right that second, if he didn't shoot and kill Patrick, that he sure would have been shot and killed, or in other words, killed.
Ven did then comment on the national profile this trial will bring and how it relates back to the movement surrounding George Floyd's death back in 2020.
America is watching this, and in every jurisdiction where there's sadly yet another one of these shootings, what we see is the criminal system in that state and or federal district are on trial by the country watching. Are you gonna do something about this? And then the civil jurisprudence system likewise goes on trial. Everybody watches. Is this jury going to let that officer get away with that? So that's why I think with George Floyd, and especially with the advent of of body cams and so forth and video. We're now holding these beginning to hold officers accountable for what they do.
Ven, however, says that peace is necessary during this time, recounting the mass unrest which swept across Grand Rapids in the aftermath of Patrick's death.
I hope that we all can show a great deal of restraint. Nobody should be getting violent. Nobody should be trying to hurt other people or insult other people. No one should be trying to do anything other than use their First Amendment right of their voice, right? Freedom of speech. I get all that on both sides. I may not like to hear one side of it, but I understand they have the right to it. But let's be respectful towards each other. Let's understand, from my client's perspective, their son is dead. The father of 2 young babies is dead. The brother is dead and never going to come back. So don't throw stones on his grave. And to be fair to former Officer Schurr, he and his family, without any question, although he's been out on bond, right? My client's in a grave, and he's been able to sit with his family now for 3 years and do whatever, I don't know what he's doing, but whatever he's doing, he's had that ability. But at the same time, I know that he and his family are going through a very difficult time. So you would never hear me ever condone anybody saying personal things towards him or that side. I believe he should be held accountable in the court of law for what he did, because I think it was wrong.
For one former Grand Rapids police officer who now dedicates his time to teaching businesses, churches, and other organizations how to de-escalate critical situations, he disagrees with Ven. John Riley of Gentle Response sat down with us for an extended interview where he watched and reviewed the encounter between Schurr and Patrick in real time, bringing us a detailed look at how police will attempt to de-escalate a situation and how an officer reacts to an escalation of a situation. Here's a quick look at some of his observations.
As the trial of Christopher Schurr nears, many are re-asking the question, why was Patrick Leoya killed that day? For de-escalation expert John Riley,
Just stop.
He says the body camera video shows Leoya's death could have been avoided.
The whole situation would have been over in 2 minutes.
He's a former police officer and now runs a de-escalation business. He sat down with 13 on Your Side and broke down the de-escalation process known as the use of force continuum.
Okay, now we're arrestable.
He says it's a series of moments in a situation that dictate what a person with authority will do or say in a situation. He says many of us already know this process.
Let me compare it to a parent. Here your kid's acting up in the side room. You get up and you stand at the doorway there. Boom, it straightens us out. But let's say that we don't straighten out. The squabbling continues. Well, now we take it to the next level. Now some type of loud verbal command. Hey, what are you guys doing?
Riley says Schurr uses the same process in the attempted arrest of Leoya.
In this case, Chris saw that we had a traffic stop. As he's stepping out of the car, Mr. Leoya jumps out of the vehicle. So right off the bat, you can hear Chris using his tone of voice. Hey, stay in the car.
He then says you hear Schurr lower his tone while asking for Leoya's driver's license.
Can I see your license?
But he says when Leoya doesn't comply, was under the influence, and begins to struggle with Schurr, Riley says Schurr had to take action to make an arrest.
He did everything he could, up to and including non-lethal tools, to try to just safely take this man into custody. He told him to stop 7 times.
13 on Your Side has previously spoken to Leoya's family attorney, Ven Johnson, who said race played a factor into Leoya being stopped, which ultimately led to his death. But Riley says things could have ended differently if Leoya had complied from the beginning.
And he is fighting and resisting, and all he had to do, after the first command to stop, this could have been de-escalated right then and there.
As for why Schurr shot Leoya in the back of his head, Riley says it comes down to training and the position the two were in during the struggle.
If it had been any other part of his body, the upper thoracic area, the chest, the back, that probably would have been, because we're trained to shoot, the largest target. Unfortunately, the head was the closest thing right here for Chris to stop it.
For 13 on Your Side, I'm Lauren Baker.
Also available on 13 Plus, you can watch John Riley's full breakdown, where he'll go through minute by minute how the encounter dynamics changed and why both parties may have reacted the way they did. That's on demand on 13 Plus. And to the NAACP of Greater Grand Rapids, this incident showcases far more injustice in our community than just disobeying an officer's orders. President Clee Jackson believes that this incident not only revealed Schurr disobeying his training, but showcased the deep divisions between officers and people of color. Even though it's been 3 years since his death, the Greater Grand Rapids branch of the NAACP says the community has not forgotten Patrick Leoya. Just days ahead of the trial of former officer Christopher Schurr, charged with Leoya's death, President Clee Jackson says he's hoping important questions are answered in court.
How did a young, I think Patrick was 26-year-old black male get gunned down at the height of the morning for a mere traffic stop, right?
For Jackson, Leoya's identity as a black man is crucial to the case, something Schurr's attorney disagrees with.
It's not a race-based crime.
I think for him to say it's not a racial issue is a slap in the face to community.
Jackson knows what the video shows and what may have led up to it.
I don't care if he had 100 warrants. He was not a threat. He was running away.
Regardless of the circumstances, he says the interaction happened because Leoya was racially profiled.
And especially when it comes to black folks and their encounters, involvement with law enforcement, and ultimately, unfortunately, we end up dead over minor stuff.
A guilty verdict, which he says is the only way the community can heal.
Community heals by getting justice, by actually getting equal justice under the law. And then if we feel that we have received that and that we've gotten that, then I think that's the beginning of the healing process.
Both Riley and Jackson's viewpoints highlight the divisiveness over this incident, but all parties agree on one thing: a jury of our peers must decide if Christopher Schurr intentionally killed Leoya. After nearly 10 hours in the courtroom, the 14-person jury who will decide Christopher Schurr's fate was assembled. I'll break down more about the jury after this. After more than 10 hours of questioning, the jury deciding the fate of former Grand Rapids police officer Christopher Schurr is decided. The defense and the prosecution chose 14 jurors out of 45 potential people questioned and 200 initially called in. For privacy purposes, jurors' identities have to remain anonymous, but information about the jurors is available. Out of the 14 chosen, 4 are men and 10 are women. When it comes to racial diversity of the jury, 10 jurors are white, 3 are Hispanic, and 1 is half black, half white. Out of the 3 Hispanic jurors, 1 is a South American immigrant. In the dozens of random potential jurors interviewed, a large majority were white. An observation also made by City Commissioner Robert Womack, who has been supporting the Leoya family throughout the process.
One of the things gave me pause that after watching these days, I only saw 1 African American that was interviewed in these last 48 hours. So we still have to do something when it comes to the jury pool to have true representation.
The jury also ranges in age. A few jurors appear to be in their early 20s, with 1 in their 60s or 70s. Matt Borgula, Schurr's attorney, says the demographics of the jury do not matter. It's how they answered questions.
What is a concern is, what's been their experience as a citizen of the United States, and whether, because they're going to bring that in jury deliberations.
And even though a lot of the jury pool has seen or heard something about the case, Borgula believes they just need to be impartial and fair to the evidence.
Because both sides wanted people that didn't form opinions about the evidence. They wanted them to listen to it fresh, as if they never heard anything before, and draw conclusions based on what they hear in the trial.
Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker did not comment on the case. So we keep on saying 14 jurors, but everyone's usually aware of 12 jurors there in the jury box during a trial. Well, there's 14 because that's 12 jurors and 2 alternates. But the alternates aren't chosen until after the trial is finished, and that just means after all the evidence is laid out and they're ready for deliberation. So that all 14 jurors are engaged during the trial, not thinking, oh, I'm an alternate, I could just sit this one out. It's so that everyone is engaged during this. And then what kind of questions were both Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker and Schurr's attorney Matt Borgala asking the potential jurors during this time? Here we have a breakdown of the 14. You can read it on your screen now. But they were asking 47 potential jurors that we heard over 2 days. Questions like, do you have any predetermined notions of this case? Have you seen the video before? I mean, it was the body camera footage was really highly publicized 3 years ago. And so a lot of people in the Grand Rapids community in West Michigan and Kent County have seen the video. They were asking them if you have seen the video, if you've read an article, if you've seen photos. Do you have an opinion on this? And most of these jurors actually have seen some form of media surrounding this case, but all 14 did say they have not formed an opinion and they don't really remember much about the case. They were also asking potential jurors, do you have any family in law enforcement? How do you feel about police? Have you participated in any type of civil rights protest? There was one juror who was dismissed for protesting in some of these marches back in 2020. And there was a lot of more questions. I could spend probably 2 hours talking about the rest of them, but those were the big ones. And there was one final really big one. Can you remain fair and impartial throughout the whole entire trial? And if someone said no, they can't, that was grounds for dismissal. So why were people dismissed? Just like I said, connections to really big connections to law enforcement that would impact their impartiality, saying that they've already made up their minds about what way they want this case to go, things that to, a normal person you would feel like fair. Yeah, they shouldn't be sitting on a jury. And now when we talk about dismissals, there's two types of dismissals. There's a peremptory dismissal and dismissals for cause. So dismissals for cause are just those. If someone said, I can't make up my mind, or I've already made up my mind on the situation, then one of the attorneys would stand up and say, well, obviously that's grounds for dismissal. But peremptory challenges and dismissals were made without cause. The attorneys did not have to say why they wanted this person dismissed. They just had to dismiss them. They said, thank you for your time, you are dismissed. And now how many jury variations / seatings were done in this? It got up to 11. That means that 11 times they brought in 14 potential jurors, saw the makeup, and then if they had any of those peremptory objections, dismissals, they were allowed to make those. So it went through 11 different variations and seatings before we got to the perfect one. And now during the jury selection process, both Christopher Schurr's attorney, Matt Borgala, and Kent County Commissioner Robert Womack gave their reactions after the jury was seated. And we asked Borgala if he believed it was significant to only have one black person on the jury.
And it shouldn't be a concern for either side. What is a concern is, what's been their experience as a citizen of the United States, and whether, because they're going to bring that in to jury deliberations. So whether they're black or white, it doesn't matter as much as what their answers were.
And Commissioner Robert Womack had this to say in response.
One of the things gave me pause that after watching these days, I only saw one African American that was interviewed in these last 48 hours. So we still have to do something when it comes to the jury pool to have true representation.
Starting Monday, April 28th, we will be streaming the trial of Christopher Schurr from gavel to gavel right here on 13 Plus. Here on 13 Plus, our Lauren Baker will be anchoring our coverage, where she will also be speaking with legal experts from across the state who are watching the trial with us. I will be inside the courthouse with Riley Mack, where her and I will be reporting live and bringing you a live blog of everything that is happening inside the courtroom. Josh Albertus will be outside the courthouse, where he will report on any spectators or demonstrators. And of course, we will have comprehensive coverage during all of our newscasts and extended breakdowns on Evening Plus with Julia Gorman starting right at 6:30 p.m. You'll find all of that and more on 13 Plus.